For the second session for tonight will be a Firewise presentation, and we're going to have two separate people come up who are both involved with Firewise groups within their local communities. The first of which I'd like to present is Vicki Perkins. She's the leader of the Firewise group in her neighborhood at Los Cumbres, which is up the top of Skyline Boulevard at the northern end of the district. So Vicki, come on up. Oh, there you are.
Hi, everyone. A lot of questions about...
Stand in front of it.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of questions about evacuations, and part of our motivation for Firewise was being evacuated. We've been evacuated in the Bear Fire, and then we were in 2017. I'm still getting feedback. Okay, that looks good. And then, of course, last year with the CZU fire. Both times, had the winds been a little bit stronger, we would have lost our homes. And so that really brings a high level of motivation across the whole community in terms of fire safety, and also has been a real motivator for us to work together as a team to accomplish more than what we could do individually, knowing that if our neighbor has not done a good job with the defensible space, that could jeopardize our house, or that if our roads are not don't have shaded fuel breaks, that could jeopardize the ability of the fire engines coming in to save our homes. So a little bit of background on Firewise. You may have heard of the term Firewise or Firewise USA. It's a program run by the National Fire Protection Association, which is a long-time kind of lobbying group, educational group on things like home sprinklers and other, fire protection capabilities. It's funded in part by the insurance companies and then works with the insurance companies in terms of risk reduction programs. And Firewise, of course, is a risk reduction program for the homeowners insurance companies. So a big motivator for us to do Firewise and to go through the paperwork process of doing it was when AAA decided to cancel everybody's insurance because of their zip code. So if you were in 95033, which is up running along Skyline, it didn't matter how much clearance you had. I'd had AAA since 1979. Didn't matter. We were all canceled. And there were other, people were struggling, with renewals. USAA, as it turns out, provides a discount if you're in a Firewise community, and some of the smaller insurance companies do as well. So we decided, okay, we need to solve this problem. We all want to be able to get homeowners insurance, be able to renew it, and we also want to be able to sell our houses and have buyers who are able to get insurance. So for us, that was a big motivator. The other big motivator was in the Bear Fire in 2017. We had structure engines from really all over the state of California were in our community, which was awesome to protect our homes. And they went through and did defensible space, or can we defend this home, assessments for each home in our community. And probably half the homes had a tag saying, we can't defend your home. And many of these people felt they'd done a good job of defensible space, but maybe it was home hardening, maybe it was their driveway access. And so again, that was a real motivator for people as well. So what the Firewise program did for us is you do a risk assessment with somebody from CAL FIRE, and you come up with a list of your risks, and then you come up with a risk mitigation plan, and then a multi-year plan to then implement the things you need to do to reduce your risk. And so in the past, we had done various, fire fuel reduction projects and that kind of thing, but they had been scattered. One year somebody would come up with a good idea and do something, and the next year somebody else would do something else. And I think the Firewise process gave us more of a discipline and a focus, and also a multi-year approach, because there is so much to do. You can't do it in just 1 year. So the steps are for Firewise is you should go to their website, and I think you can just Google Firewise USA, and it'll walk you through what you need to do to become a Firewise community. But basically you form a team. It's more than just what one person can do. You do the risk assessment with CAL FIRE, and then you develop your multi-year plan. And then Firewise requires that you do one educational event a year, and also that you do at least 1 hour per resident of risk reduction work. So roadside clearance or something like that. 1 hour a year is not a lot to ask of a community to try to reduce their fire risk. So the bar is pretty low in terms of what you need to do to keep your Firewise status. So some of the programs we've put in place, actually first I'll tell you what our risks were, because they may be the same risks that you guys have. When we did our risk assessment, we realized many people understood defensible space and had done a pretty good job of it. But home hardening, which is a newer concept, that 0 to 5 foot perimeter, before that used to be lean, clean, and green, if you remember that from CAL FIRE. Okay, now it's just like nothing. Rocks, hardscape, bricks, pavers, things that don't burn. And most of the homes in our community do have ornamental, plants by their homes. So most homes have 1/4-inch foundation vents that embers can go in. So the home hardening, that was an area of risk for us. Our roads, we've got a lot of long, narrow roads, and we've done shaded fuel breaks along them, but the recommendations on our steep hills, we need to extend those shaded fuel breaks to 50 feet, which is a long ways of shaded fuel breaks. So we're kind of doing 10 feet a year and then trying to maintain what we've got.
What is that?
Oh, shaded fuel break. Okay, great question. So if you look out here, right, you just see a ton of trees. So the idea behind a shaded fuel break is you thin your trees, but you still leave it shaded, because if you were to just clear cut them, you'd probably get Scotch broom and I don't know what else growing, manzanita. I don't know what's in this area, but you get a lot of brush and grass and stuff. But if you thin out the trees and then keep a shaded canopy, the shade will keep a lot of the invasives from growing. It's a lot easier to maintain. It's more attractive. On a steep hill, you've got something holding your hill, because you would not want to clear cut and then have erosion problems. And I'm sure the fire guys can tell you more about shaded fuel breaks. But basically, you cut the brush and then leave the trees.
Why is the fire dangerous? Are we allowed to do that in the riparian corridor? Because that's the only place
Yeah, and I know with the riparian corridor, the county website has some restrictions on that. And that's not a situation for us. We're up on a ridge, but that's something you'd want to look into. And CAL FIRE has people too that can give you advice on. They have foresters who can give you advice in terms of what's appropriate for your specific area. And
I think just that this area is a riparian corridor, and yes, it's protected, and don't just go cutting your riparian corridors, you could get big fines. That being said, there's also some controversy about the winds coming in and drying things, and I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'm just saying ask the question very specifically for your location.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another risk for us is we had one way in and one way out, and our roads are 2 to 3 miles long. And then some of them are narrow and curvy, and that's kind of scary in an evacuation scenario. And then our fourth risk was needing defensible space around our water company infrastructure, and especially in light of what happened with the San Lorenzo Valley Water Company. So we then put programs in place to address those risks. So we negotiated with adjacent landowners, and this took quite a bit of work, through private roads, gates, gullies, all sorts of landscape features, to have an alternative way out of our community. And they're normally locked gates, but we've worked out a protocol. If any of us need to evacuate, the locks come off and we're able to get through. It's a confusing route, and we did a test drive of it, so that we did a trial run for evacuation, where kind of a drill. And as it turns out, we did the drill 1 week before the lightning storm last year. So when the lightning hit, everybody still had their go bags because they'd done them the weekend before. And thankfully, we did not have to use our alternate evacuation route, but people were definitely ready to evacuate and had that mindset. And that is something I recommend doing, because if you've never had the pleasure of evacuating, it's hard to imagine what it's really like as you're walking through your house saying, okay, now what do I need to remember to bring? My cell phone charger and, all of that. So having your go bag packed, and I think after having done it twice, at this point I'm a minimalist. All the important papers are in the cloud. Family pictures are stored off-site because that was the most time-consuming thing, was lugging all those boxes into the car. And I can just basically grab like a gym bag and out of there. So anyway, something to think about. The other programs we've done is we've got fire advisories volunteers where we've trained 8 people. They've been through a couple of different seminars, and we have a checklist that we've developed along with South Skyline Fire Safe Council to go around to each house in our neighborhood and identify things that they can do to improve their resilience, focusing on home hardening, the 5 feet around the home, address signs, defensible space. And we've seen a big improvement over the last 2 years as people are getting personalized advice on their homes. We set up a community chipping pile. We're in an area where there's a lot of brush, a lot of manzanita and that kind of brushy plants. And we found this access road. It's away from any homes, and we have a community chipping pile. People can bring all their brush up, and then every month or so during the winter and spring, we'll hire a chipping service to just come in and chip it. And it's a lot cheaper than if we were to each do that individually, and I think it's just easier for people. And then, the idea is do your clearance during the winter and the spring, not during the height of fire season, so that you're ready. So that's been real helpful. And then we're working on our shaded fuel breaks along the roads, and then we've had a lot of trees dying. I don't know if you guys are seeing that. Yep. So a lot of, the tan oaks, and then some of the old firs. And so we call it the DDD tree program, so dead, diseased, or dangerous. And it's all private roads, so it's up to us to maintain the roads. And so we go through once a year, and I think we're going to have to start doing it twice a year. We mark all those trees along the roads, and then we get bids from tree services on the whole thing, and that ends up being a lot cheaper, again, than if individual homeowners were to each do that themselves. And we set up a competitive thing with a couple tree services to take out those trees, because it can be quite expensive. So those are the programs we've set up. We're doing education events like the evacuation drill, custom flyer for everybody in the neighborhood on how to sign up for all of the alerts, what websites to monitor if there is a fire, so that people know how to know that they need to get out, and then they know how to monitor the situation. And one thing we're doing with evacuations, because we don't have good cell phone coverage either, especially if the power is out, is everybody honks. So, call your next door neighbor, make sure they know about it, and then everybody honk on their way out. And with the CZU fire, I think that was really helpful because it was loud. We had a lot of people honking loudly. And we have a Facebook group with information. So I think some of the benefits for us have been, one is the insurance seems to be a little bit easier. We've had some new buyers where their insurance companies have inquired if we're a Firewise community, and so maybe that's helpful with underwriting. And some homeowners are getting discounts, and then it has helped us keep focused on our priorities so that we are making progress against the things that are the biggest risks for us as a community. So that's it.
Thank you, Vicki. So we'll have another speaker, Mara Milinic. She leads the Firewise group in her home community, Chemeketa Park, which is adjacent to Highway 17 and the Lexington Reservoir.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mara. As he said, I'm from Chemeketa Park, which is primarily a redwood forest, although we do have some oaks. So one of the reasons that we wanted to start Firewise is because it was every man for himself regarding fire safety. And so if we became a Firewise community, we had this cohesive plan, which was talked about earlier. So our community back in the day was logged extensively, and they cut down all of these really old growth redwoods. So if you think about a forest with old growth redwoods, there's a huge canopy. And as you know, if you garden, nothing's growing underneath the canopy, right? It's all dense shade. So when we do our defensible space and our shaded fuel break, what's happening in our communities, we're actually restoring the forest to its original way. Because when they logged those old growth redwoods, the sun came in and all this junk grew up. So Since we've become a Firewise community, we've really had a focus on restoring the forest and creating these shaded fuel breaks. And we reorganized our chipping day so that we could get more bang for the buck. So we've removed several football fields worth of brush just within 3 years of becoming a Firewise community because we had a targeted plan. So the big forest in the middle of our community is a shaded fuel break. The big forest below our community is a shaded fuel break, and not the one on top yet. But when you become a Firewise community, you have a plan, and you organize things and you make them better. The other thing that really was impetus for us to become Firewise is it lets us take control of the fire safety in our neighborhood. Because if you're not a Firewise community, your plan is just like, let's hope somebody saves me and saves my house. So by becoming a Firewise community and organizing ourselves and educating ourselves, we've taken more control of our own safety. And that was a big thing for us because it's a single lane roads, it's all a hill, and we have to save ourselves. So that's another thing that we did. We ended up when we became Firewise because Vicki mentioned you have to have an hour per home, and we have 150 homes. So that means we have at least 150 organized and unified hours a year on fire safety. Then everybody still does their own stuff for their homes, but that doubles, triples the amount of work you're doing to mitigate your fire risk. And then we have education days. So we had an education day about insurance, about home hardening, about evacuations. So you're just more organized as a community and more knowledgeable. And our Firewise team, we have set up a kind of a calendar of what we do month by month. So June and July was defensible space, shaded fuel break. August, September, October is the first 5 feet. Working on your first 5 feet of home hardening. So by kind of setting up a community calendar that works for us, it gives everybody in the neighborhood a plan of what they want to do that month for fire safety. And then you just keep repeating your calendar. The other reason I think that you should become a Firewise community is because I think it shows respect to your first responders, right? Because if we don't take care of our stuff, if we just kind of leave it all haphazard, how can we ask them to come in, save our homes, save our communities, right? They're asking us to do this. So that's why we do it, right? Because it's showing respect. And our overall arching goal in Chemeketa Park is that when the apocalypse comes, right, and we're all evacuated and it's an out-of-town fire crew that doesn't know the mountains, that everybody is safe, right? That all of those first responders that come into our community with single lane roads and dead ends and not a lot of turnarounds can get in, do their job, and get out safely. And so that was it for us too. So when you draw the card, if you got to, defend Chemeketa, that's a good draw. That's what we were working for. Okay, that's it, right? Any questions? Oh yeah, go ahead.
When you were chipping in your community, the area here was also clear cut for the logging industry. And when I'm going in through my property, I'm finding a lot of logging artifact as well as Native American artifact. But then when we are cutting down trees or saplings that have been allowed to come up for the past 24 years or whatever, I'm finding that some of these trees are spiked, have nails in them or other kind of hardware. When you were chipping, how much of a problem was that for you and your community?
Well, they used to bury garbage in our community because it was vacation homes originally in the 1920s. So yes, we found a case of wine, by the way, and we called it in, and it was not a high quality wine. I was like, dude, this is going to pay for our bridge, but it did not. That is an issue, and another issue we have is English ivy, because that once it gets a hold in, it just takes over. So it was an issue, but we know what we're digging. We know what we're working with. We didn't know about the wine, though. Yeah. Yes.
The previous speaker talked about how the newer thing is to harden the building itself versus the vegetation. Are you guys talking about that at all?
Yeah, we're doing that a lot. That's our first 5 feet campaign. Because if you think about it, in a large-scale fire, basically your home is going to have to defend itself unless you're lucky, right? And then, that's what you have to understand. And you also have to understand when you evacuate, It might not be the best time for you. Maybe you were on vacation. Maybe you didn't do your yard work that week. So yes, we definitely focus on that. And that's, just keep referring to that.
I wasn't clear enough. I'm not talking about the vegetation in the first 5 feet. I'm actually talking about the building materials.
Yeah, we talk about that. We have cement. We know about hardscaping. Sorry. And then our vents. And we actually did, we got a grant for $500 to home harden our community clubhouse with the little tiny mesh and the base rock. So yeah, we talk about that a lot as well.
So I want to say one of the benefits I didn't mention being a Firewise community is a couple of the vendors of the fire safe vents are giving discounts if you're a Firewise community. So you get 10% off on Embers Out, or the other one I think starts with a B. I can follow up with Chris and let him know the vendors that are doing that. And that's something you can work together as a group and potentially do a larger order and negotiate even a bigger discount.
Maybe I should try one more time. Maybe use the example. We have been doing a lot of work taking our flat surfaces with cracks and covering them either with stucco or cement or even roofing material we're putting on top of our decks, because I'm just not sure if you guys are working on that kind of thing, but we've heard a lot of stories of very well defended space where an ember comes and lands in a deck crack.
Yep. No, decks are a vulnerability, and each house is different. People are doing things like replacing their decks with cement paver patios or brick patios, something that's rock instead of deck. There's rumors about some of the Trex being more fire resistant than others. I don't know with the decks.
Yeah. So if anyone has more information specifically about building materials, we'd love to learn.
Well, the NFPA website that runs Firewise, the reason why it's funded by the Insurance Institute is because they use scientific methods to determine what is the best materials for your home, hardscapes, or whatever. So you go through their website and you can click on decks, and they'll tell you what lumber is more or less resistant and all of that stuff.
CAL FIRE has a list of WUI approved materials for your deck.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be able to find that on the CAL FIRE.
Yeah, and the windows as well. Yes.
I'd like to ask both of you, how many families do you have in your group?
Chemeketa Park has 150 homes. And of course, not everybody's active. But I would say between all the volunteer days and all the volunteering opportunities, more than half of us participate in community events. But we've seen a huge increase of people donating their hours for brush clearing and home hardening.
Yeah, we have 120 homes, and I would say, well over half of the people are at least somewhat involved, and maybe 10%, maybe 12 are really driving the effort.
Yes.
Were your people enthusiastic into organizing as a Firewise group from the beginning, or did you do some coaxing and some encouraging to get them organized?
There was definitely momentum building. How we started it in Chemeketa is I just posted on Nextdoor, hey, does anyone want to do this with me? And a couple of people joined us. And so that ended up being our steering community. But now that we're several years into it and we keep educating more people, there is definitely more buy-in. And, everybody has to do what they're comfortable with, but still they have to find their path to it, right? Because people don't want to cut down trees. People don't want to rip out their ornamental plants, but they have to get there sooner or later. So they just have to find their own way. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura.
Hi, I'm Chris Norton. 3 people organizing in the Branciforte Happy Valley Conservation Loop area. And the 2 gals who have headed up this meeting today are with us. Marilyn is, where's Marilyn? Marilyn? So there's Marilyn, and here's Catherine from Conservation Loop. Now, I think when I kind of forgot, and we have a flaw here, which I'll try to correct, and that is we've heard from two Firewise groups that have given you a great pitch on why to do Firewise. But you should know, right now we have two organizers that I hope are going to start Firewise groups in their own communities. We have a gal over here who has done a fantastic job, Susan, on Rodeo Ridge, which is an important location for us in our fire shed down here. But what we forgot to do, I think, is let you know if you have more questions and if you want to start looking at a Firewise group and forming one, then you can contact me. I'll give out my email address here. I'm chris@cnorton.com, and I'd be glad to answer any questions and kind of guide you in that direction. And I'm not sure if Marilyn or Catherine are ready to do that, but at least you've got my address. And what we did was we started a Firewise group that starts roughly at Happy Valley Road and extends less than a mile up the road. It's a very small group. It's 21 parcels, 65 people. And we started organizing that in May. And we have the application ready to submit shortly. So if you are interested in doing a Firewise group, and if you start small, you can get up and running fairly quickly. Even before that, you can do what Glenn is advising that you do, which is work around your own property, 5 feet out, 30 feet out, 100 feet out, and start reducing vegetation. Protect your own property, work with your close neighbors, but then start looking at combining at a larger scale, maybe 10 properties to 50 properties. So again, what we've done and what hopefully Catherine and Marilyn are on the way to do, start a Firewise community that gives you a template and kind of a pathway to follow the two speakers we just heard from, who are way ahead of us. And it's kind of hard to convince people that you actually can save your house. And you can save it in so many different ways, all the way from the very simplest stuff of clearing 5 feet around your house, all the way up to forming a Firewise group that you can coordinate with neighbors up and down the street. And one of the wonderful things about it is you move around and meet people that you've lived next door to. And I'm embarrassed to say, in years and years, I've met lots of my neighbors for the first time. And it's a great feeling just to start to form a community and to start gaining some feeling of self-empowerment, that you are not at the mercy of what it possibly is inevitably coming this way. We're not at the mercy of it. We can save a lot of houses, but we need to move along, and forming a Firewise group is a way to accelerate doing that. So again, I'm sorry we left you without a place to get more information, but there it is. You can start with me, chris@cnorton.com, and I'll try to steer you in directions where you can get up to speed. And there's plenty of resources out there, so thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So let's take just a quick 5-minute break, get up, stretch your legs. I encourage you to introduce yourself to a stranger here. This is all a community event. Meet someone you've never met before, start talking about your property, their property, things we can do while we get set up for the third and final session. So take 4 or 5 minutes, stretch your legs,